At any rate, back to what we were talking about, doing a risk analysis and focusing on that more close to home. I don't want to necessarily say small scale, because this stuff could turn into big stuff as well, but it's that more likely stuff, more, close to home, localized type stuff. And that stuff that, when you doing that risk analysis, when you first start preparing or you're trying to figure out where to go next, do that and ask yourself, hey, I know this is a big issue right now, but are there other things that I'm forgetting about, blind spots that I'm forgetting about before I focus on those? And the cool thing about preparedness is if you do it evenly across the board, food storage, water storage, security, first aid, all of that stuff, and you kind of build upwards, you're going to get prepared for whatever happens. So focusing on a well-rounded plan is a whole lot better than focusing on, okay, what if a nuke comes, I need to get a gas mask, I need to get some potassium iodide, I need to get all this stuff, and forgetting about the other stuff. You can't do that. So very good point. I don't know how many preppers make that mistake. Any prepper that has been doing this for a while, I don't know that that's a mistake. Most of the people listening to the show, probably not a mistake they make if they've been listening for a while. So, but it is one of those newbie mistakes. Keeping with the planning section of their article here, and this is one that I think a lot of us fall, and this is not just emergency documents, it's a lot of different things, but not keeping your set of emergency documents up to date. This is one of those that, I've got all my stuff in a fireproof folder and stuff like that, and it can go a couple years before I even get in there and dig into it and find out what's exactly in there. This goes for not just emergency documents and stuff, but a lot of different things. These MREs that were in the back of the shelf. A lot of different things that if you don't force yourself to pay attention to that stuff, it kind of goes to the back burner. And then when the time comes, you actually need those, you're not going to have the correct information. So that's one I think probably a lot of people fall into. It's just that complacency thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, if you look at it as if everything stops tomorrow, whatever you have done, that's it until it restarts again. And if your thoughts are, okay, maybe it stops for a month, like a hurricane, major natural disaster, or if it goes on longer, whatever you have done now, that's all you got.
Yeah.
So trying to figure, when it comes to emergency documents, all right, well, that's the last update I can get. It's good to know. Like, I think emergency documents goes in there with like medications and prescriptions, right? Trying to get a buffer on hand. So that way, I don't know, maybe times get hard and prescription prices go up. I don't know, is that crazy sounding that with everything that's going on? Who knows what it is, but trying to keep your prescriptions up, trying to keep your family contacts up, knowing where people live, all that kind of stuff, I think all fits under there. Yeah.
And kind of along the same lines of that is all of your like rechargeables, batteries and stuff like that. Same type of situation, and going through your bug out bag and doing all that stuff. Same type of thing. If you let that stuff go, something happens and you've got, a couple different portable chargers and you've got some different things going on, and something happens and those chargers are out of juice, what are you going to do at that point? So you got to make sure all of that stuff, make sure everything is ready to go when at any given moment, basically. So, and
it's cumbersome, right? It's like, if you try to stay prepared, ready to like, okay, everything's 100% ready to go as 100% as you can make it within your means. Dude, that can be a tiring thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I always want to keep this, this much long-term storage food on. I always want to keep this much readiness. That ends up being a lot of like, you got to go check those batteries. You have to do things in your life that take time rather than just sitting down and doing nothing. So keeping up with it can be a chore.
Yeah. And if you've got kids, they're going to be using those. When we had the external batteries, when we had the kids living here and we have all these external batteries, they're great, except for it's so convenient just sitting on the couch, plug their phone into it, juice it. And when it's dead, they just put it on the end table. And then I'm responsible for making sure that it's full. So same type of thing. And White Rabbit said in the chat, guilty about the portable chargers not being checked regularly. Yeah. But like you said, it is kind of something you really do have to stay on top of because it's really easy to not do that stuff. I've got a drawer specifically for batteries that are charged, and then a drawer for the rechargeable ones, a drawer where they need to be charged. And if the drawer where they need to be charged needs to be empty, and if it's not, I've got work to do. So it's just however you do it, just make sure that when the time comes, you're ready for that crap. So. The third one, this is in the survival mindset section, and I've got the link below, and I'll leave it in the show notes as well. But this is number 5 on their list, is underestimating other humans as a threat. And this is one I think with, like I said earlier, with people that have been doing this for a while, we don't necessarily, we understand how people can basically, wreak havoc. People are the reason a lot of these things happen. People are the reasons things will get worse. Very rarely in a disaster type situation are they the reason things get better. So, but I think that the fact as far as underestimating people, it's more of an understanding how human nature kind of devolves in a situation like that. What people are going to be willing to do if they can't feed their kids, if they can't, do the things that they're used to be doing. Because when life is good, everything's good. But when everything goes bad, and they, you talked about the food shortages earlier, when everything goes bad, what does, Jane, the soccer mom, what does she turn into?
Oh yeah, the minute when you have the president, and who knows, maybe, they're not mopping it up like his comments on Putin, so maybe there's something to it that they didn't want changed. And when I equate that with food shortages, because the next step on food shortages, and I think we already have food shortages going on, the next step from food shortages is like hunger and food riots kind of thing, right? Like people willing to commit crime on stuff like that. It's what we've all talked about for so long as preppers, And so I think what we also have to understand too is that not only is it not good to underestimate other humans, I think it's also not good to overestimate ourselves in the fact that we need to have other people in difficult times. Like a small family is going to have a really hard time surviving. Yeah. Right? A mom and dad and some kids, if it's gone bad enough where you're like, hey, they're breaking into people's houses, going for stuff or whatever. Well, you'll probably want somebody to be awake 24/7 in case they try to do something, right? So what does that look like? Well, maybe it's good to combine with somebody, have a plan to combine with somebody, or go somewhere, or somebody comes to you, So I think while we tend to kind of go like, it's a great way to protect yourself. Just let me put an iron dome around me and not let anybody get in. Well, I think the fact is, like, we don't have an iron dome to put around us, and people will get in. So when that happens, we need to have support unless we're going to handle it all on our own. And there's only so many times that you go through that where you don't get banged up and dinged up yourself. So,
yeah. Other people are one of my main concerns. That is, you think about the disaster, and then you think about how things are going to unfold and the different possibilities and all that. And all of that is dependent on the population, how many people are around, what the different issues that those people are facing, just a lot of different things. So, yeah, like we've said in the past, we did a video where people are the X factor. People are going to decide how bad a situation unfolds. And that's why it's always when you're talking about bugging out, getting out of the cities, that's exactly why you want to get away from that population.
And remember, man, the way we're going in politics too, I think if that does come to pass, they have to demonize somebody. Right now they're demonizing Russia. Okay, Putin, whatever. Who knows? Maybe the Russians get tired of Putin and they toss him and they get somebody else in there and everybody gets along again because they're all running their money through Ukraine. Everybody's happy again. Right. And so, but maybe it doesn't, They get somebody else in there that's corrupt. The nation building thing works so great. I don't know why they don't do it all over the place. Well, yeah. That's what we've kind of been doing,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So the next one, I'm going to see how much time we're running into here, but We may not get to all 10 of these, but we'll go ahead and try. But the next one here is disregarding the role of comfort. This is number 6 on their list when it comes to being prepared. And this is one that, I try to do because I don't want to have to be eating legacy food and freeze-dried food and all of that stuff when everything is bad. Just that stuff. I want to be able to kind of live my life as close to what it is now that I can in some sort of, if it's a longer term type disaster, if it's a pandemic, something like that. So that comfort stuff I think is super important. Unless you're just planning on drinking water, for the whole for the whole duration of that stuff, you're going to want some other types of drinks. Luckily, I've got this MRE. It's got some orange drink in it, whatever that is. Maybe I'll try that.
Orange drink might be good.
Yeah,
it might still be good. It's sugar, right?
Yeah. But that comfort stuff, I think, is super important. Chocolate, which would be kind of hard to, store long term, but stuff like that. I mean, have the SpaghettiOs for the kids.
Eat that shit, man.
What's that?
Keep chocolate around when the world's going to hell. You're going to eat the chocolate when the world's going to hell.
Yeah, that's true. But how long? I mean, chocolate lasts what? A few months,
I think chocolate lasts for quite a while, man. It's all sugar based too. But
what? It's not going to go bad, but it's going to.
I think you're right, but I also think that people need to look at it as, at what point, because there comes a point when, if it gets bad enough where you're not able to go to the store, so your ability to access new goods, food, either because they don't have it at the store, or it's so dangerous to go to the store that you're trying to minimize that risk by eating what you have in your house and your long-term food storage. So I think the plan needs to be to get uncomfortable. Like, oh, you know what? We're going to get uncomfortable. Like, it would be great if you have a bunch of Tangs stored around, or your, the expired MREs with good drinks in them, and that so you could access that. But I think at some point you go, you know what? We may be down to the point where, like, we are not eating because it's fun. We're literally eating because this is like, we're counting out how much we're eating.
Yeah.
And trying to limit our exposure to leaving the house just because there's bad shit happening outside. I mean, think about I don't think, and then someone in the chat mentioned here just a second ago, where was it? The 202 says, can you foresee resources being dedicated to cities and the burbs actually being the raiders after the fall? I think there could be that. I mean, that's a possibility, but I also think that when you run into that and and the people in the city are starving, well, they need to demonize somebody. Who are they going to demonize? All the people out in the country. Oh, those are where all the food is. They're not getting it to you.
Yeah.
At that level. So that could be kind of lead to problems too, man. But I think being able to hunker down and know that resources are going to be scarce. It's interesting now. We throw so much stuff away and we all look at that like stuff sitting in our yard as being bad. But I think if you were like around in the Great Depression, if you had like 3 cars sitting in your yard, even if they're run down, like, hey man, that's a rich dude right there. Right. So, I think a refocus, if this keeps getting worse, a refocus on resources, kind of what, 202 said, but you're going to need to refocus your relationship with resources.
Yeah.
And understand it's like, hey, at some point, if you're not getting the food you need to survive, from that point on, you're on the clock. Whatever you have, like we said a minute ago, is whatever you have is what you have. So I think getting the idea and putting in your plan that at some point, it's that trigger line we talked about in another episode. Our role now goes from comfort to, hey, that chocolate bar is fat and calories, and this is how we're looking at what we're going to eat each day.
Yeah. One last thing on the comfort too, and we're talking a whole lot about food, but with food, being able to cook those different things that are kind of those comfort foods, being able to do that stuff. But it's not just about food too. It's about sleeping. It's super important to be able to get a good night's rest. So being able to have that type of comfort, your clothing, your feet, all of that stuff. Comfort plays a huge role in the way your brain is going to kind of process the situation. If you're pissed off and uncomfortable throughout a whole situation, you're not going to make the best decision. So Let's see, where were we here? That was number 6. Number 9, just because someone else does it doesn't mean that you need to. And this is, I think, something that we all fall into. I think it's just human nature for people to kind of do that, where you see somebody else doing something. I do it all the time. I'm like, oh, that's freaking sweet. I want to do that. I want to try that. And then you get into it and you start doing it, and you're like, why am I even doing this? It's really not that important as far as my plan goes. You can attest to that just from the crap we do on the video stuff, where I'll go down rabbit holes about, we got to do this, we could do that. And you're like, man, just chill out. let's just stick with what we're doing. Get good at what we're doing. But it is kind of that same mentality of, you don't have to, just because somebody else is doing it, just because they have the means to do it, doesn't mean you have to. You control what you do.
Yeah, no, I think hey, you know what? It's fun watching you go down those rabbit holes, man, because you get so excited about it, right? So me sitting there watching you try to figure it out and sitting online for like an hour at a time while you figure stuff out, it's hilarious. No, it's a fun time. Yeah.
It's all the details, man. It's the details that make the difference. And that's the same thing with preparedness too. It's all those little details. Yeah. But there's a lot that's unnecessary.
Well, you don't ever want to be a lemming, right? Don't go along with something just for the sake of going along with it. Now, you may be at a junction where you're trying to make a decision about what to do, and a bunch of your friends that you think make good decisions, that don't make, just run off half-cocked, that make good decisions, have all decided like, hey, I'm doing this. And you're like, I don't have the bandwidth to even make about a decision on this right now. So I'm going to be the lemming and just go along with people that I know make good decisions. So that's really your decision. You're like, hey, I'm going to make sure I make a decision based upon good decision makers, right? But you just don't want to go, hey, let me be a lemming and just go along with people just because they're fucking going along, right? That doesn't necessarily do well for survival when you have those decisions to make.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so I'm going to go through one more here, and then we're going to move on to the next section. But this one is, let's see here, number 11 on their list over at Backdoor Survival. Constantly obsessing about being behind the curve. They have it written curveball on the website, but that just doesn't sound right to me. Behind the curveball, but constantly obsessing about being behind the curve, and that's something prepping is never done, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So you're always going to be behind the curve. But sometimes, kind of like me these last, few weeks, I kind of have obsessed about being behind the curve, because it's like, it's not necessarily being behind the curve. It's making sure that I'm good to go. But I think we can all kind of get to that point where you get anxious about things and you think, oh, crap, I got to do this. I've got to do that. If you just relax and just do what you can, I think that's the way you need to go.
Well, I think you have to remember that all you can do is what you can. And it's okay to be nervous about shit, but don't overhype it. Like, don't make yourself more nervous than the situation warrants. Like, there's a lot going on, and as preppers, we tend to be doom and gloomers. And so we're looking at the situation going like, oh, this goes nowhere good. Right? This is it. Yeah, but you know what, man? I've been hearing this is it since I first got around preppers or survivalists back in the 90s. It was it. The next thing, Y2K, this, that. And so I don't think any of the stuff that's going on is necessarily good right now. And I don't know that this is it. Like, this is the end. So I think you have to keep going forward with it's just going to maybe still just suck and not be the end.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so plan on that, and then do what you can to make it not suck as bad. Right. To have a better life. I mean, I think really that's what preparedness is about. And if we get too worried about the doom and gloom, and we obsess that we're behind the curveball all the time, I'm always behind what I need to have to survive. And then we put that into as, oh, well, that's pretty scary. Like, if I may not survive, that's pretty scary. And then that lets us go down this rabbit hole. And the whole thing is we're feeling that, like, what happens if I don't survive? How about plan on doing our best and doing what you can? And that's all you can do. And that's good enough. We don't all prepare at the same pace. We don't all prepare for the same things. We don't all prepare in the same ways. Just do what you can. And that's the best you can hope for.
Yeah, yeah. Like 202 said in the chat, whose curve? Do for yourself. And that kind of goes along to, you don't have to do what everybody else is doing too. Yeah. Do what you can. And then you need to, regardless of what that is, depending on your limitations, you got to be comfortable with it going, I've done everything I can. This is as prepared as I can get at this moment in time. So, bring it on, basically. Cross your fingers if you have to, and do what you need to do.